really none of your business. It's none of my business.
Hello, Folja, buenas tardes, and welcome to the Motivated Classroom August Spotlight. Today I am speaking about episode 85 with Margarita Pérez-García. This was a brilliant episode about reading, and in particular easy to read novels for beginners. And it follows up really nicely on yesterday's Spotlight with Adriana Ramirez. So in Margarita's episode, we spoke a lot about reading and novels and how she does it in her classroom. Now, Margarita is an author of some fantastic literature for beginner level students of Spanish in particular, and has written many books with Adriana in a little series. Like, they have a lovely series on moscas, like books to do with like flies, and it's fantastic. There's some lovely stuff there, so you should check them out. And I loved speaking to Margarita because she's also part of the Own Voices group of authors who are typically authors from Latin America who are writing about cultural aspects from their own cultures and speaking with, as they say, their own voices, representing their own culture, which I think is really nice and really important as well to have in our class. And I just love the way she writes. I love her books. I think they're really entertaining. I think they're really humorous, and I love the one Arroz con leche, for example, or what am I just called, Arroz con cosas, and it's fantastic, quite new, and yeah, she's just brilliant. So some of the things Margarita said that I really liked for this spotlight. So the first one, she was talking about extensive reading, and she was saying extensive reading is for me a practice that transcends the classroom and that will follow the students well beyond school. So when my students become proficient, independent readers, I consider that my job as a teacher is done, because they can continue to read by themselves and learn by themselves. And I think that, like, instilling a love for reading is, if that's all we do as teachers, then I think we've really done our job quite well if we have instilled a love of reading with our students. So I think that one was really nice. And then she was talking to me about the difference between using a novel in her class versus textbooks. And she was saying, like, reading is the most effective approach to process extensive amounts of input. Nothing beats reading. We can see the impact of reading because readers become better readers. They acquire more, they expand their vocabulary. We can see and feel the positive impact in their writing ability and the way they speak. Often textbooks present texts that are well beyond the level of the student, and the student, in the face of those texts, cannot really read them. So reading becomes a deciphering exercise. Not reading for fluency, and even less reading for pleasure. It becomes a tricky exercise to be done with a dictionary, and it's very slow and students get to hate it. And I thought that was really appropriate because everyone says, textbooks contain readings, and yeah, they do, but often they're very decontextualized and completely separate to the students, their lives, completely separate to a story. They're just like an individual text, and they may sometimes have really interesting cultural content. That is the truth. Sometimes they do. But when there isn't a narrative behind them, and there isn't a narrative like in a book that draws it all together, it's just nowhere near as entertaining for the students. They just don't like it as much, and that's quite obvious to me. We then spoke about content and teaching culture, like I mentioned at the beginning. For Margarita as well as for Adriana, it's really important that we teach culture, and that, as Adriana says, we open a door to the culture and we walk the students through there. And for Margarita, this is really, really important as well. And then we talked about teaching a novel, and I really liked Margarita's take on, instead of like pre-teaching all the vocabulary in maybe a more traditional way with TPR and with different exercises and different readings, and Margarita's take on it was that she likes to do a story listen before each chapter. So she says, when I do it this way, I don't need to pre-teach anything, because the story listening gives that first exposure to the words, and that's beautiful. I've taught so many books with story listening, and in 1 hour I tell the story or read the chapter, and in 14 lessons I've done a book. I don't need to prepare anything. I just get with my book, a pen and a prompter. So she has her prompter that has the words that help her then to create the story listening for her students before they engage with that chapter, which I thought was really nice. And she kind of summed it up by saying, that's why preparing a prompter is such a key in the procedure and the method of story listening, because you need to have, it's like your accountability. You need to be guided. You're using those words that you've decided. The student is going to find those words in the text. And so you must have exposed the student to those beforehand. So it's just a really lovely way of doing it. And then she finished up by talking to us about cover work, and essentially using novels as a way to set cover work for 3 or 4 days with smash doodles. Or on her take of it was that you get the students to do 3 chapters of reading, and then after every 3 chapters they create like a kind of a poster that's got themes and titles and quotes and stuff on it, and then they do the next 3 chapters. And it's a great way because it's the same whenever she's absent. It's just a different book. So thank you so much. Muchas gracias to Margarita Pérez-García. It was wonderful to talk to you, and please go out and have a look at her books. They're fantastic. Adios, hasta mañana.